Hello, everyone. It's Jay here, and this is my favorite subject. It's just a series about me and my interests and my transgender journey. I will point out I am not an expert. This is just me going over my experiences. It's a form of self therapy, I guess, but also a way I hope to educate others. I decided to start doing this series after answering a bunch of questions on the Transgender Day of Visibility, which is March 31st. I posted these questions online on Facebook, and about 18 of my friends or so responded and asked questions, and some questions that weren't on the list. And I did my best to be honest and answer them. And I felt that that was still a disservice. I wanted to answer all of them. So I decided to go ahead and start making a little video series. So starting with number one, the first question is, has being trans been an obstacle in your life with friends, family, work, etc.? Well, first I want to point out that trans is not a noun. Trans is a adjective. So you can be transgender, you can be a trans woman, you can be a trans man, you can be a trans person or a transgender person, but you can't just be a trans. It doesn't work that way. Okay, so just going to nip that one in the bud right there. So the short answer to the question for me is, luckily, not really. The longer answer is, well, longer and more nuanced. Now, some would say that I have always been a transgendered person ever since I was born, and that I only just realized it, later on. Others would say that it really began with my cross-dressing when I was a teenager, wearing my sister's clothes and then telling her about it and then telling my mom and then joining the Navy and still cross-dressing in private and then telling my then girlfriend, later wife, and then trying to quit. But I would regard the beginning of my main transgender journey as having been in early 2016, with the end of my marriage. We'd been married nearly 16 years, and we were having various issues, most of them in the sexual arena. He wanted more, I didn't really care, and I'd always felt kind of weird about that. It was like, what was a normal amount of sex? There was one time very early in our marriage where she was like, I want more sex, like every day. And I was like, are you a nymphomaniac? And again, this was from my perspective because how much I was desiring sex. And later I came to realize that I wasn't desiring it at all. And that's what made me realize I was more asexual. And it's not that I don't satisfy myself sometimes, but I just don't get horny at every woman that I look at. So that realization led to other discussions with her about what I got out of sex. And I had to admit, not really a lot. It didn't hurt, but I mainly did it just to satisfy her because it was what I was supposed to do as a cis hetero husband. So we were driving in the car one day and having one of these discussions, and just out of the blue, she says, you need to figure out if you're transgender or not. And I was just floored because I'd had thoughts before in the 90s with my cross-dressing about what I really was. I'd called a clinic and asked about breast implants, but they said that I needed to come in for a consult before they could quote me a price. So that shot down that idea. And I just had to start thinking about what it really meant to me to be transgender. And luckily, I started going to counseling, and I had support from friends, and I went to a support group, and I learned all these new definitions. So this realization led to my wife and I just kind of emotionally separating. We still lived together as roommates to support each other because it was pretty amicable. It took her a while to accept everything that I was going through and to stop blaming me for dragging her through a loveless marriage, which it wasn't a loveless marriage. I still care very much for her. It just, I couldn't give her what she was expecting. I started going to counseling. I started going to therapy, and I started cross-playing or dressing up in costumes at conventions. And I made new friends who supported me and helped me understand. I did research that helped me find out about new terms that I didn't understand, and starting to really figure out who I really was or what I really felt like. As far as work, I had just retired from the Navy in 2015, and I was working as a civilian for the Department of Defense. So I went to my boss and I said, hey, if I wanted to start a transition in my lifestyle, how would that work around the office? She went to human resources and they were thrilled. They were actually eager to have a transgender person on staff so they could start putting into place all the bathroom policies and stuff that they were discussing at that time. The good news is they said that they had to, according to their rules and policies, they had to accept me however I wanted to present. So I could literally show up in a dress the next day and they would have to accept that. I personally didn't feel ready for that. I took a little bit longer amount of time. I let my hair grow out. I did some more research. I'd spent another couple of years cross-playing and finding out my true identity. And that's where I then settled on non-binary and gender fluid rather than a full transition or what many consider a complete transition to the feminine body. In 2018, I officially changed my honorific from Mr. to Mix, and then only about a month after that, I showed up to work with my hair down and some makeup on and in a nice pantsuit. I got new pictures for my IDs and new pictures on my biography page, and I started femizenting on a regular basis. Started getting my beard removed, and that allowed me to femizent more and more often. And now it's like come and go as I please. Mostly I femizent, like I did today, but some days, I just wear a tie and loafers and pin my hair back, and I mascuzent as best as I can with bright purple hair and painted fingernails. The great thing at work is they said it didn't matter whether I was femizenting or mascuzenting, but as long as I stayed professional and did the job I was hired for. And that's how everybody should be, in my opinion. It doesn't matter what I wear or what I do in the privacy of my own home, as long as it's legal. But as long as you can do the job that you're being paid for, then nothing else should matter. The next thing that happened is I started reconnecting with my family. There had been kind of a long hiatus of misunderstanding, nearly a decade, that I hadn't communicated with my mother, my father, or my sister. And once I came out on social media as being transgender, as being gender fluid, as being a cross-player, I finally reached out to them and connected. And they had seen some of my stuff. And of course, my mom and sister knew from when I was younger that there was something different about me. And they've been great. They've been educating themselves, going to counseling and support groups as well, and really trying to help understand my reason for making this lifestyle change. My dad, on the other hand, living in another state and having no pre-knowledge of my cross-dressing, was completely floored when I told him. I felt I had to tell him because it was a great amount of stress just talking to him on the phone and knowing that he didn't know yet. So I told him I was transgender. I told him that I wanted breast implants. I told him that I was gender fluid, non-binary, and he didn't really understand. He's dealing with it in his own way, and I do my best to stay open and answer his questions whenever they come up. I finally got divorced, and my ex and I are still friends. She's still in the area for now, dealing with her own issues. She remarried, and now she's been laid off because of the virus. So I'm doing my best to support her and be friendly and help her out if she needs me. All around, I've had very few negative reactions to my transition. There's been people at work who pulled me aside and said, doesn't it bother you that you're confusing people? And I just have to be like, if I'm confusing you, that's okay. But your opinion is your opinion, and I like the way I look. I do this because I enjoy it, not because I'm trying to confuse you. Another instance happened at a convention where I was dressed in my Zero Suit Samus, my bright blue, bright yellow hair, 6-inch heels, walking around the convention. And a gentleman kind of stepped up to me and asked if he could have a photo, and I nodded. And he gave the camera to somebody else, and then he steps over, and he very politely asked if he could put his hand around my waist. And I said, yes, you can. And he kind of paused, and he said, what? I said, yes, you can put your hand around my waist. And he kind of put his hands up and he went, I'm sorry, I have to go, grabbed his camera and ran. Literally ran away. And I was just kind of taken aback by that, to have such an extreme reaction to realizing that I wasn't all cis woman. And luckily, something good came from it. A girl who'd been in the group of people, the person he asked to take the photo, she saw the whole interaction and she was like, "Did he just run away from you because he heard your voice and doesn't think you're woman enough? Oh no, honey, you're gorgeous. Let's get a photo together." And Sam is now one of my con sisters, and she's really great. So love you, Sam. We'll always have Katsukan. So for me, for now, for the most part, I live my life. I do what I need to be happy. I don't do anything illegal. I don't force my agenda on anybody, but I am always there to answer questions, to educate people, and to give them my perspective, because I feel that the more honest I am about what I'm going through, that clarity that I have in my life hopefully can transcend what I'm going through, and they can realize that they can be honest with themselves about anything, whether it's their job or their lifestyle or how they feel about their parents or anything like that. I often feel bad that my journey has been pretty easy. I have friends who have been raped. I have friends who have been beaten up. I have friends who've done time in jail, who've been nearly dead or bankrupt or lost jobs because of their transgender journey. And I feel so terrible for these people because I didn't have that. It's been easy for me. And I understand I have white privilege. I have male privilege. I have military. I have, all these little things. So I try not to feel too bad, but I still do. I feel guilty that I'm not having much trouble, and my brothers and sisters are struggling, and I try to be there for them as much as I can. Well, that'll do it. Thanks for tuning in to my favorite subject. Questions are always welcome, so feel free to put anything in the comments, like and share and subscribe, and more of these questions will be answered as we move along. So stay tuned. Love you all. Take care.